Follow me into the dark.
Hey weirdos, Dad is Better here, and I know it's been a minute, and there's obviously a big change here. My hair is now green, all green. I just shaved my undercut, or well, I have a professional do that, but I just shaved that, so it looks like it has like no hair in this lighting. But yeah, I don't know, I just got kind of no pun intended, like a wild hair and decided to dye my hair green. It's kind of fitting for the story that I want to talk about. It's not something that's personally happened to me, but I've heard this story told on many podcasts and many different situations and BuzzFeed. Like, I feel like recently UFOs and aliens and, you know, those have always been a thing, but I feel like they've kind of like came back into the public eye with like all the disclosure stuff, and the government's releasing things and talking about things they never talked about before. So I thought I would tell one of my favorite UFO creepy related stories or encounters, I guess you could say. Again, this is not mine. It just really creeps me out every time I hear it, and I continue to listen to retellings of it just so I can hear it again and again because it creeps me out. So this happened, first off, September 11th of 1976. So this happened to Dr. Herbert Hopkins. He was a doctor who was also a UFO researcher. And there had been encounters with the Men in Black before. Barney Hill, I believe, was his name, but there's a number of encounters before that. I can't remember the very first encounter's first name. I want to say his last name was Dahl or Dahl, D-A-H-L. But prior to Dr. Hopkins' encounter with a man in black, there were other encounters before that UFO researchers were aware of. So he gets a call. He's been doing all this UFO research, right? So he gets a call from a man. And he says he's from the New Jersey UFO Research Center. And Dr. Hopkins is like, yeah, sure, sounds legit. And he's like, I want to come discuss, the sightings and the research that you're doing. He's like, all right, great. Literally, like 10, 15 minutes later, he hears a knock on the door. And there's this very odd man standing outside his door. And there's one thing in particular that's creepy, but he doesn't have eyebrows. He's extremely pale. He's in, like, dressed to the nines, though. Like, Men in Black do know where it's at, an all-black suit. But he's got odd mannerisms. And Dr. Hopkins invites him in, and the guy takes off his hat. And he notices that not only did he not have eyebrows, eyelashes, etc., he had like no hair, like a clean bald head, which I know there is a condition that affects body hair. I mean, it's not the strangest thing. It's not impossible for someone to naturally be completely hairless. But the weird thing is that his ears were set different on his head. Like, they seemed lower than what they would normally be, and they were extremely small for his, I guess, ratio to ear to head ratio. His ears were extremely small and extremely low. But the weirdest thing about this guy is once he came in, he was like almost translucent pale. Like, I'm pretty pale. I know a lot of pale people. This guy was like white, like this beautiful new edition of this goat head that I've acquired. White pale. But he had ruby red lips, okay? Like some Marilyn Monroe red lips. So he's talking to Dr. Hopkins about his research and his sightings, etc., any encounters he may have had. But he's doing this weird thing when he's talking. So as he's talking, he's taking the back of his hand, nails, and he's like hitting him up against his teeth like this. I guess it could be this way or this way. It doesn't really say. It just says he was tapping his nails on his teeth like after every sentence. So he'd be like, okay, so tell me about your sighting. And he'd just sit here and do this until he spoke again. This is the worst part. This part creeps me out so bad, and I don't know why this is so much more creepier than the remainder of this. Oh my god, the remainder of this encounter. But as he's sitting here tapping, Dr. Hopkins realizes that he's got like a red substance on his fingers, like where he's been tapping at his mouth. His lips are drawn on. Like, it's lipstick coming off, and not only is it like lipstick coming off of like your lips, he has no lips. He just has literally a mouth hole that he's talking out of. Okay? As if that isn't weird enough, this guy is like, I bet you have coins in your pocket. Hopkins is like, well, that's a really weird thing to say, but I do have coins in my pocket. And the guy, we'll just call him the MIB, MIB, if you will. MIB was like, pull them out of your pocket. I want to show you something. So Dr. Hopkins is like, okay, dope. Yeah, sure. You know, if it was me, I'd be like, great, I love magic. Like, you know, amaze me, impress me. So he tells the doctor to hold a coin. So he's like holding a coin. I don't know if it's a penny. I feel like it is a penny, but I've heard it kind of differ. So it's a coin, a penny, a quarter, nickel, whatever your little heart desires. We're going to say it's a penny. So he's holding this penny, and all of a sudden it starts to like glow blue. And then it like starts to glow kind of like a whitish silver. And then it just evaporates into thin air. Like, this MIB or MIB has just made this penny vaporize. And maybe it went to another dimension, maybe it's dead. It just destroyed all matter of this penny. We don't really know, but the penny's gone. And then the MIB basically threatens Dr. Hopkins and says, if you don't quit talking shit and if you don't quit doing all this research on these UFO sightings, that could happen to your heart. Okay? Just threatened to kill him, basically, that we're gonna vaporize your heart if, you know, you don't cooperate with us and quit doing what you're doing. And then not only that, but then he brings up Barney Hill, who had an encounter with the MIB and died shortly after. And the MIB asked Dr. Hopkins, he says, have you heard of Barney Hill? And he's like, well, yeah, I know, you know, he's a fellow UFO researcher. He had encounters. You know, I didn't know him personally, but I knew who he was. And he's like, did you know that he died? And then Dr. Hopkins was like, yeah, I know he passed away. And the MIB was like, do you know what he died from? And Dr. Hopkins was like, well, you know, the papers and what I heard indicated he died from some type of cardiac arrest or heart condition, heart attack. And then the MIB goes, well, that's not entirely true. He's like, he died because he knew too much. Then, even weirder than the red lips, the vaporizing penny, the threats, indicating that someone died because they knew too much. Then this weird, pale, lipless mouth hole of a man stands up and says, I have to go, my energy is running low, goodbye. And like gets all like Adventure Time arm wavy, floppy, you know, weird, and like awkwardly like goes out the door like his battery's dying or something. So yeah. And so yeah, I just wanted to share that strange experience. It's been on my mind a lot today, which creeps me out. I'm gonna end this video in a second, but Men in Black are kind of like Slender Man in that I don't really believe Slender Man's real. I don't know about the Men in Black. I mean, I guess I don't really know about anything. I've never encountered a Slender Man or MIB, but I think it's funny that they look similar. Like they're pale, suit, tie, and like with the Men in Black, it said like the more you know about like UFOs and the Men in Black, the more likely you are to like get a visit from one of them. So I hope the Men in Black don't show up at my door, because I like think and talk about them a lot, just because, I don't know, it's just interesting to me. Even if it's 120% bullshit, like full bullshit, okay? It's still an interesting story. Like, it's still a good creepy tale. So I just wanted to share that. Tell your friends about Dr. Herbert Hopkins. That alliteration. He it's a very interesting story. If you just Google Dr. Herbert Hopkins, you'll find all kinds of different articles about it. I'm sure there's links to books with similar encounters or just research related things. If you have been wanting to read about creepy things but you weren't sure what direction to go, go extraterrestrial. Like, aliens are creepy, a lot of encounters. Again, might all be bullshit. We don't know. I've never had an alien encounter. I have saw a UFO, but you know what? We'll save that for another time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this crazy kind of all over the place tale. I hope I at least told it somewhat well without any notes and just winging it. You know, that's how I roll. But I love you guys. And remember, weirdos, stay scared. Bye.